So in Luke chapter 11, Jesus is speaking specifically to disciples. He's not sharing this with the crowd. And so the idea is, if you're going to be a disciple, a committed follower of Jesus, you do not have the luxury of going forward with unforgiveness and bitterness. So here's the result. Paul is writing to Christians, and these Christians are becoming bitter against other Christians. And so in Hebrews 12, Paul says this. He says, "See to it that no one comes short of the grace of God, and that no root of bitterness springing up," underline root of bitterness springing up, "causes trouble," and then underline, "and by it many be defiled." When someone becomes bitter, it becomes like a root, and that root continues to grow down. The thing about that root is it doesn't like say, I'm gonna grow this far, and then I'm gonna stop. That root wants to keep growing until it completely consumes you. And when somebody becomes bitter, they become bitter, what they wanna do, and you can always see it, they wanna grab everybody that they can find to jump on, and they want everybody they know to be bitter with them. Have you ever seen anybody like that? So that's what they want to do. That's what they want to do. So write this down. Satan uses deep hurts to make me bitter. And bitter Christians, it all begins with being wounded, and they feel justified in their bitterness. And instead of saying, okay, Lord, this happened to me, you saw it, how do you want me to respond to this? How do you want to use this in my life? Instead of that, they become bitter. That root continues to grow, and it becomes like an infection. And the thing about infection is never happy to stay where it is. It wants to just keep on going. Same thing with bitterness. Well, interesting also, a verse that you're all familiar with, Romans 8:28, it says, "And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose." Now, very important, it does not say that God causes all things. It says that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him, who are called according to his purpose. So God doesn't cause all things, but he will cause all things to be used for good, and I would add, if we will let him. So Satan wants to use deep hurts to make me bitter, but God, there in your outline, uses deep hurts to make me like Jesus. Deep hurts to make me like Jesus. So in Luke chapter 11, Jesus is speaking specifically to disciples. He's not sharing this with the crowd. And so the idea is, if you're going to be a disciple, a committed follower of Jesus, you do not have the luxury of going forward with unforgiveness and bitterness. So when Paul says God causes all things to work together, I want you to write this down. That means that God will never waste a hurt. God will never waste a hurt. I'm going to tell you a quick story of somebody that some people love and some people can't stand. But how many of you have ever heard of Joyce Meyer? Okay, good. You can clap for that. But if you've ever heard her testimony, again, some people love her, some people can't stand her. What you might not know is that from a very early age, I'm telling this in church, I'm going to have to use church words. So from a very early age, her dad, the person that you think you should be able to trust most in the whole world, began to violate her to the fullest extent, literally hundreds of times through her childhood, all the way through her teenage years, continuous violation. One day, as she tells her story, her dad took her in the car. She was a teenager at this time, takes her to a graveyard and is violating her in the car. A policeman shows up and pulls the dad out of the car. Joyce thinks finally somebody is going to step in and stop this violation from happening. So the father convinces the police officer that he's not her father, he's her cousin. So the police officer says, okay, I won't arrest you, but you have to let me violate her also. Just before the violation takes place, a call comes in on the radio and he has to go to another call. Well, the violation continues with her father. She grows up, and as she gets into her 20s, she becomes a Christian. And as she becomes a Christian and she's growing in her relationship with the Lord, God reveals to her and says, if you're going to go further with me, you're going to have to give forgiveness. You're going to have to forgive your father for what he did to you, and you're going to have to forgive your mother because she allowed it to happen. It's a very difficult thing. But she chose a very painful thing, a very painful path to operate in forgiveness. Because she chose the path of forgiveness, whether you like her or not, she's been able to minister to millions upon millions of people, and thousands upon thousands of people have given their life to Christ. But it would not have happened if she didn't decide first that she had to operate in forgiveness.